So back in the 1920s, the US government decided to ban alcohol, the whole shebang, making it, selling it, moving it. But here's the thing about telling a whole country no. It doesn't always work. In fact, what it really did was spark an incredible revolution in language. Let's get into it.
I mean, think about it. An entire nation is suddenly told they absolutely must not do something they're, pretty used to doing. The government draws a hard line in the sand. So it really makes you ask a simple question. What do people do when a law says you can't?
Well, the answer is you get creative. You have to. You invent a whole new language, a secret code, really, a collection of slang and clever phrases that lets an entire underground culture just bloom right under the noses of the people trying to shut it down. And to really get why this language explosion happened, we first have to understand just how strict this law was. This was, without a doubt, the era of must not. It all kicked off in January 1920. The 18th Amendment becomes law, and just like that, the country is officially dry. And this wasn't some minor regulation, this was in the Constitution. They weren't messing around. They tried to cover all the bases. And just look at these words. Banning, outlawing, interdiction. These are not gentle suggestions, right? They scream a total, complete shutdown. The government's message could not have been clearer. You must not have anything to do with alcohol. But that's not exactly how things played out. You see, when the front door gets locked, people have a funny way of finding the back window. The era of must not accidentally created a whole secret world of places where you could still find a drink. You just had to know what to call them. The cleverness here is just fantastic. How do you legally sell booze when it's illegal? Simple. You don't. You charge people a fee to come see a blind pig or some other weird animal you have on display, and then you just happen to give them a free cocktail. It was this perfect little loophole that let these hidden bars, or speakeasies, operate in plain sight. And here's a perfect example of how language itself adapted. A juice joint started out as something totally innocent, a place that sold sodas and soft drinks. But as Prohibition dragged on, the term got hijacked. It became code for a place that was serving let's say, a much stronger kind of juice. Okay, so let's say you found one of these secret spots. You're in. But what you might actually be drinking there, wow, that was a whole other story. With big breweries and distilleries shut down, the quality of alcohol took a nosedive, and the ways people made it got dangerously creative.
For instance, get this, needle beer. So it was legal to make this really low alcohol stuff called near beer. So saloon owners would buy a barrel of that. And then, using a huge syringe, they'd literally inject pure grain alcohol right through the cork. It worked, but man, was it risky. You had no idea what you were really getting.
And then you have the amazing brick of wine, another brilliant legal workaround. You couldn't sell actual wine, but you could sell a solid brick of dehydrated grape juice. And the best part? The packaging came with this very specific warning that basically said, hey, whatever you do, don't add water to this and leave it in a dark closet for 21 days because it will turn into wine, which of course was a perfect set of instructions. Now, of all the slang from this time, bathtub gin is probably the most famous. It just became the go-to term for any cheap homemade spirit. And the name actually came from a really practical problem. The big bottles they used were often too tall to fit under a kitchen sink, so people had to fill them up using the faucet in the bathtub. And while bathtub gin was kind of the catch-all term, if you were making whiskey, it was called White Lightning. But both names, they really pointed to the same thing. This stuff was powerful, it was illegal, and it was almost always really, really bad quality. That was the gamble you took with every drink. So this whole new reality, the secret bars, the risky drinks, it also changed how people acted. It changed how they saw themselves. American society basically split right down the middle, and people had to decide which side they were on. You were either a dry or a wet. Simple as that. The dries were the ones who supported Prohibition. The federal agents enforcing the law were even called dry agents. And on the other side, you had the wets, the folks who wanted alcohol back and who kept those juice joints humming. It was a massive cultural clash. But, some people refused to be put in a box. The writer H.L. Mencken, who was definitely a wet, he made up a word just for himself, ambibulous. It was his fun way of saying, hey, I'm not just for alcohol, I am for all of it. It really captures that defiant, almost celebratory vibe of the people breaking the law.
And of course, with all this newfound drinking came a whole new vocabulary to describe it. A really heavy drinker wasn't just a heavy drinker anymore. No, they were a whale. And if you drank way too much of that bathtub gin, you weren't just wasted, you were blotto. These are such colorful, vivid words that paint a picture of what life was like in this underground world.
So after 13 very long, very strange years, Prohibition finally came to an end. The secret world of speakeasies and bootleggers mostly faded away. But its language, well, that left a permanent mark.
I mean, think about a word like hooch. It had been around before the 1920s, sure, but Prohibition brought it roaring back as the perfect word for cheap, illegal booze. And today, a full century later, we all still know exactly what hooch means. It's stuck.
And when you look at the timeline, it's kind of wild. The law itself was actually pretty short-lived, just 13 years, that's it. But its linguistic legacy, that secret language that was born out of necessity, has lasted so much longer.
So here's the big takeaway. Trying to enforce an absolute must not didn't really stop people. It just made them change the way they talked about things. It created this entire secret vocabulary that actually outlived the law that sparked it. And that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the must-nots of our time? And what secret languages are we creating right now?